I want to ask you a question for those people who are trying to learn to channel or talk to spirit or practicing mediumship, and they're questioning their abilities or they're questioning what's coming through and having imposter syndrome. What kind of advice would you have to give those people?
When we're first engaging with our intuitive self or with our abilities, the fear aspect of it is the threshold. So it's like kind of diving off of a diving board, And for many of us, myself included, especially going back to when I was 18 and really understanding more of what this was, there is a fine moment, and what happens in this moment is when we're going from the rational to the all-knowing part of ourselves or to the connection to the other side, there's a lot of energy, static, fear that we have to kind of push through first to make that connection. So I always encourage people to know that this is not an exact science. Channeling is not an exact science. But if you're able to trust that what's coming through you is meant to be coming through you, and really leaving it alone, not changing a thing about what's coming through you in that moment. Because when you try to change something, when that flow is happening, that's the ego wanting to interject, and it's the ego wanting to control something. And when we're channeling, you can't control what's coming out, And I'll give you a quick story. Years ago, this was in my first book, but years ago, I was reading for a woman, and there was a moment where her father was coming through, and he showed me a pig. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to say this right now. It's so, I was doubting it in that moment, And she saw me in that moment, kind of like pausing and kind of just shutting down. And she's like, just say it, And I'm like, your dad keeps showing me the pig. And she fell out of her chair basically because the pig was the family store that had been passed down through the generations. And for me, what I really came to learn about spirit is that the language that they speak is not our physical language, but we have to trust all the impressions that we're getting, and we have to just vocalize them. So that has been my biggest lesson too in doing this beautiful work with spirit, is knowing that I'm not in control of it. I'm just the voice box for them, So anyone who is listening right now, who is really being pulled in the direction of working with energy, whether it be, as a medium or as an intuitive or as a light worker, it's really important to know that the more that you get out of that way of thinking, of that ego way of thinking and that controlling way of thinking, and when you really trust that it's a split millisecond in which the ego wants to destroy everything that's coming through you that is divine. And it's your choice whether or not you give that energy or not. So if you give that energy, it's going to destroy what is coming through so beautifully and so naturally from source and from spirit.
It's so well put. Thank you so much for that.